At 9:37 at night, a 13-year-old boy's phone went silent, and he would never touch it again. This is the story of Dylan Redwine, but it's not like the missing person cases you've heard before, because the last person to see him alive wasn't a stranger. It was the one person who was supposed to protect him most in the world. There's a photo at the center of this case, a photo a child should never have seen. And the moment he saw it, his fate was sealed. If you watch this video till the end, you'll understand a chilling truth. The danger to a child sometimes doesn't lurk in the dark. Sometimes it sits right at the head of the table. And you'll learn the warning signs no family should ignore. This story doesn't begin with a scream. It begins with a court order. An order forcing a boy to go live with the person he feared the most. Let's not begin with the death. Let's begin with the fear. Because Dylan was afraid of this trip long before it happened. In the fall of 2012, a 13-year-old boy in Colorado told his friends he did not want to go. He said he dreaded visiting his father for Thanksgiving. This wasn't ordinary teenage sulking. Dylan's friends and family would later confirm it in court. He genuinely did not want to go. But he had no choice. This visit was mandatory. It was set by a court order in the custody dispute between his parents. Think about that for a second. A child clearly said he was afraid, but the system still forced him to go. Because on paper, a father has the right to see his son. On November 18th, 2012, Dylan landed at the airport in Durango, Colorado. The person who picked him up was his father, Mark Redwine. It should have been a warm reunion. It was the complete opposite. There was no hug. Dylan was cold, ignoring his father. He sat in silence the whole way home. To an outsider, he was just a moody teenager. But the truth behind it ran much deeper. And to understand it, we have to go back 1 year. Every tragedy has a starting point. For Dylan, it wasn't a knife or a gun. It was a photo. The Redwine family once looked like any other. Mark, Elaine, and 2 sons. Corey was the older brother, Dylan the younger. Then the marriage fell apart in bitterness. In 2011, a year before Dylan vanished, the 2 brothers discovered something. Private photos of their father. Shocking, humiliating images. It was something no child should ever see about a parent. And it left a crack that could never be repaired. But here's the interesting thing about the 2 brothers' psychology. They reacted in 2 completely different ways. Corey, the older one, wanted to keep the peace. He tried to convince his brother to say nothing. Bury it. Don't make a scene. Dylan couldn't. He was the kind of person who needed the truth. He wanted to confront his father. He wanted him to explain. Later, prosecutors believed that very difference sealed Dylan's fate. He carried the truth his father wanted most to keep buried. But no one knew that forcing an adult to face their deepest shame is sometimes the most dangerous thing a child can do. That tension simmered for a year. And then the court order came. And Dylan was forced to step into the home of the person he feared the most. Now we come to the most chilling moment of the entire case. Not a sound, but silence. On the drive home from the airport, Dylan asked to sleep at a friend's house. Mark said no. So the boy texted his friend, arranging to meet at 6:30 the next morning. It was an ordinary plan from an ordinary teenager. It showed Dylan was thinking about tomorrow. He had plans. He was looking forward to the next morning. Mark's house was in Vallecito, a remote mountain area of southwest Colorado. Outside, the winter was closing in. Inside, only 2 people were there, a father and a son who didn't want to be there. We don't know exactly what was said that night. No one does. It's a secret between 2 people in a house in the middle of the woods. But the phone data tells us one thing. At 9:37 at night, all activity on Dylan's phone stopped. No texts, no calls, not a single time online, complete silence. Think about this. A teenager who had just made plans for the morning, a boy who lived with his phone like every kid today, and then suddenly every sign of digital life vanished. That silence wasn't normal. For a 13-year-old, it was almost impossible. Sometimes the most frightening evidence isn't the sound, it's the sudden silence, in a place that should have been full of the noise of life. And the next morning, when that phone rang, no one would answer. A mother knows her own child, and that's exactly what exposed the first lie. At 6:46 in the morning of November 19th, Dylan's friend called as planned. The phone rang. No answer. He tried again. Still silence. Across town, Dylan's mother, Elaine, had been uneasy from the start. She said she'd had a bad feeling even before her son got in the plane. The kind of feeling only a mother has. When she couldn't reach her son, she didn't hesitate. She called the police immediately, and Dylan was officially reported missing. And what about Mark, the father who was supposed to be with his son all night? He claimed he'd gone out to run errands that morning. When he came back, after 11, Dylan was gone. He said the TV was still playing a cartoon the boy had been watching. It sounded plausible, but it collapsed instantly because Elaine, who knew her son better than anyone, immediately spotted the flaw. Dylan didn't watch cartoons. That wasn't the son she knew. And that was the first thing that made police stop. Mark didn't understand his own son well enough to make the lie fit. A lie rarely collapses over something big. It collapses on the small details. The details only someone who truly loves the victim is sharp enough to catch. And the deeper the police dug, the more details didn't add up. There's a small detail a sheriff happened to notice, a detail that seemed meaningless, but would later haunt the whole case. The Vallecito area is rugged mountain terrain, thick forest, empty trails, rocky slopes, but by November, ice and snow were beginning to cover everything. That made searching nearly impossible. With each passing hour, the snow grew deeper and deeper. Every trace would be buried forever. Meanwhile, investigators began watching Mark's behavior, and they saw more and more that just didn't sit right. A sheriff recalled something. The night Dylan had arrived, he drove past Mark's house, and the house was pitch dark, as if no one was inside. But normally, that house was always lit up. A small detail, but it raised a big question. If Dylan had just arrived that night, why were all the lights off? But the most suspicious thing was still to come. For months after his son went missing, Mark refused to cooperate. He dodged questions. He gave no information. He kept a strange silence. And ask yourself this, if your child went missing, what would you do? You'd do everything to find them. You'd tell the police every single thing you knew. The innocent usually crave to help finding the truth. A prolonged silence sometimes is an answer all on its own. These two people should have been searching for their son together. Instead, they sat on national television and accused each other. In 2013, Dylan's case drew the attention of the entire country, and Mark and Elaine appeared on a famous nationally syndicated TV show. It should have been a moment of two parents pleading for help together. But instead, it became a public confrontation. Elaine and Corey were convinced Mark was involved. Mark fired back. He claimed Elaine had kidnapped Dylan to avoid the custody fight. When asked about the photos, Mark flatly denied them. He said they were photoshopped, that the person in the images wasn't him. But it was his own son, Corey, who stepped forward. He said one thing that made every denial meaningless. I saw those photos with my own eyes. Think about the weight of that. A son publicly turning against his father on television for the brother he had lost. When a truth is denied long enough and brazenly enough, that denial itself becomes a kind of evidence. While the whole country watched this family war, the Colorado mountains quietly kept their secret until the last of the snow finally melted. When the snow melted, the suspect suddenly spoke up. and what he said may have been a carefully built trap. The brutal winter forced the search to stop. It wasn't until June of 2013, when the snow melted, that the police could continue. At that very moment, Mark broke his months of silence. He said that when he pulled his car out of the garage, he found Dylan's fishing rod, and he didn't know why it was there. The police immediately changed direction. A fishing rod suggested water. They focused the search on a large lake in the area. But months passed and they found nothing. And that's when investigators realized something chilling. Could that mysteriously appearing fishing rod have been a trap? A false clue planted to pull them in the wrong direction. If the lake was a distraction, then whoever planted it wanted them away from someplace else. A place where the truth was actually waiting. So they changed course. They moved up into the mountains, the area where someone had once seen Mark lurking. And less than a week after searching the mountains, they found the first thing. A killer is sometimes too clever to save himself. A false clue built too carefully can become the very thing that points the police in the right direction. After 7 months, the mountain finally spoke, but not in the way anyone had prayed for. On the mountainside, a few miles from Mark's house, the police found the first remains. Part of some clothing, part of a body. Now, here we won't go into a lot of detail because Dylan was a child and his dignity matters more than any sensational details I can give you. But tests confirmed it was Dylan Redwine. That moment turned the case from a search into a murder investigation. But one piece was still missing. A crucial part had not been found. And it would be the piece that decided everything. But it took 2 more years. In 2015, a group of hikers happened to pass through that area. They found the rest of Dylan's remains, not far from where they were first found. No one set out to find it. It appeared as if by chance, as if the mountain itself had decided it was time to tell the whole truth. But no one knew that this late discovery carried a detail that would shatter every excuse Mark had built over the years. Nature doesn't keep secrets forever. Sooner or later, the truth finds its way back to the light. Mark had an explanation for everything, but there was one piece of evidence no lie could cover. For years, Mark always had an answer ready. At first, he said Dylan ran away. Then he said his son might have been attacked by a wild animal. He even said Dylan might have been hit by a hunter's stray bullet. Every time new evidence appeared, he had a new explanation. But forensics told a completely different story. At Mark's house, the police used luminol, a chemical that reveals traces of blood invisible to the naked eye. The sofa, the floor, the coffee table, several areas reacted to the chemical. A cadaver dog trained to detect the scent of death picked up something in the truck Mark often used. But the deciding piece came from the remains found in 2015. A forensic anthropologist testified at trial. She said Dylan's skull showed signs of a fracture, along with marks believed to have been caused by a sharp object around the time of his death. Think about that. No wild animal leaves that kind of mark. No stray bullet explains it. Mark's entire defense, built so carefully over years, collapsed in a single piece of testimony. A person can lie to the police, lie to television, lie to his own family, and even lie to himself. But bones never lie. From the day Dylan vanished to the day his father was convicted was nearly a decade. This is a story about the patience of justice. The case had one big challenge. Most of the evidence was circumstantial. No eyewitnesses, no confession. So prosecutors convened a grand jury. In July of 2017, the grand jury issued an indictment. 2 days later, Mark was arrested in Bellingham, Washington. At the time, he was working as a truck driver. But the road to trial was anything but smooth. The COVID-19 pandemic caused at least 3 major delays. Each delay meant Dylan's family had to wait a little longer. Finally, the trial took place and lasted 5 weeks. Dozens of witnesses, hundreds of pieces of evidence, a mountain of documents. Notably, Mark chose not to testify on his own behalf. He stayed silent to the end. On July 16, 2021, the jury withdrew to deliberate. They needed less than a day. The verdict was just a few words: guilty, second-degree murder, and child abuse resulting in death. Justice rarely comes quickly, but for families patient enough, it sometimes still comes, even if it takes nearly 10 years. And on sentencing day, the person who hurt most in the courtroom would stand up to face his father one last time. In the courtroom that day was a person carrying a pain no one could understand, the one who lost a brother and a father at the same time. On October 8, 2021, Mark Redwine was sentenced to 48 years in prison, the maximum sentence. Judge Jeffrey Wilson did not hide his outrage. He said a father's duty is to protect his child. Instead, Mark had caused his own son's death in his home, then sanitized the scene and hid the body. The judge said he could hardly recall a criminal so utterly without remorse. Even in a statement before sentencing, Mark still wrote 2 words: not guilty. But the most heartbreaking moment didn't come from Mark. It came from Corey Redwine, the older brother. Corey stood up and read a statement. He said the past 9 years had weighed on his mind and on his body in ways no words could describe. He said 48 years still wasn't enough. Think about Corey's place in this whole story. It was he and Dylan who found the photos. It was he who tried to convince his brother to stay silent. And now he had lost both, the brother he loved and his father, in the most horrifying way. On one side, the victim. On the other, the killer. And both were his own blood. The greatest tragedy of this case isn't only the young life taken, it's the burden those left behind must carry for the rest of their lives. Looking back at all of it, there's one thing we should remember. Don't let the name Mark Redwine be what lingers in your mind. Remember Dylan, a 13-year-old boy who simply wanted the truth from his own father. That's the chilling reminder this case leaves behind. Listen to your children when they tell you they are afraid. Sometimes a child's fear isn't irrational. Sometimes it's the only warning we ever get. So what do you think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you think Dylan's story deserves to be remembered, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next story.